Hello and welcome back to Inquisitor Martyr. Last time we dealt with a group of mutants hiding down the Underhive, and it turns out they seem to have killed a tech priest and had a strange monolith down there. And now, before we go anywhere, we have to talk to Artificer Omicron Arc.
Tech priest. I couldn't help but notice that the tech priest I found at the monolith was a member of the requisitional expedition, just like you. Makes me wonder why these expeditions are always connected to heretical activities. They conducted research here, and now the monolith is stirring. Care to explain?
As you request. Full disclosure is the most logical solution at this point. Everything else hinders efficiency. The Adeptus Mechanicus, much like the Inquisition, includes many factions. The requisitional expeditions served as a cover for the secret operations of our factions.
Elaborate, tech priest.
We are the Xenarite, specializing in research into archaeotech and Xenos relics in the Caligari sector.
Are you confessing to tech heresy?
Negative, Inquisitor. Several Forge worlds provide discreet support to us. 67.8% of the local Xenarites serve Inquisitors, mostly the ones you call radicals.
Should I find this reassuring? It doesn't mean it is not heresy, only that it could be widespread heresy.
Logical conclusion. Communion with the Cortex records revealed a hexamathic code with the coordinates of the Xenarite base under the Hive. Investigating the location could provide useful data.
Or a meeting with some more wretched cultists.
Alright, and now we have to go to the base of the requisitional expedition. Alright, let's do some melee for this one. Like I've said before, one thing that isn't really explained a lot in 40K is a lot of these kind of strange, almost eldritch relics, much like the monolith. They rarely get... They'll get an explanation sometimes, but they typically don't, or it will just be a simple hand-waving of this belongs to an ancient civilization, or this is unknown, and then it's never touched on again. And it's, like I've said in previous videos, it's a problem 40K has. These interesting things get left behind in exchange for a continuation of what you could consider the overall 40K story. And even then, you can argue within the 40K story, very little ever changes. Like within the Primarchs, you know, to my knowledge, Lionel Johnson hasn't come back, because I believe he's still missing, or he's in the rock somewhere. Then you have Vulcan. He's also still missing. You have Mortarion, who, at least how I've interpreted some of the works, it almost comes off like Mortarion doesn't like chaos anymore, doesn't fully believe in the idea anymore. He comes off almost as like he's tired of it. And it's an interesting bit, but I know it's never going to, or likely never going to go anywhere. I can never fully say never, because they might pull some degree of switch on us and actually have something interesting happen with it. The problem becomes that if nothing ever happens, they run the risk of turning 40K into kind of what happened with Warhammer Fantasy, where fantasy had to effectively have an end times situation just to change things up. Though that one always felt like a cop-out. I think they could have done some stuff, they just didn't want to. I mean, with Ind and Cathay, they could have really introduced them. They could have done something. I mean, in the end, it's a matter of whether or not it should have happened. And it's the concern of 40K, like, are they going to suffer the same fate? Because being forced to resort to having to, like, nuke your entire universe just to have a start over, it's never fun. It's never rewarding. Especially, like, with fantasy, some characters still got a story, while others were essentially just written out of existence.
Loading.
And especially with characters and, like, having to buy models and sometimes basing entire armies around them, nobody really wants to be told, like, oh, that character you have isn't canon, and we don't have an alternative for them. Because then you're left with this miniature you may have spent a lot of time on going, well, they're garbage now.
Loading.
But the hope is that they learn enough to avoid such a mistake with 40K.
Cleansing shots fired.
My hope there, though, is that they don't go crazy and, like, remove some more Primarchs or kill them off, and then introduce new Primarchs. As like, oh, well, you know, Fabius Bile figured out how to clone Primarchs or make Neo-Primarchs. I'm already kind of worried that they're going to do that with Primaris Marines. That we're going to have Chaos Primaris. Which really seems dumb, but I put nothing past it. Because even though you think they would have safeguards in place to prevent chaos corruption, I just could see it happening, or it turns out Belisarius Cawl was working for Tzeentch or made a deal with Tzeentch, and this is kind of him calling in the debt, being like, oh, well, you need to make a backdoor so some of these guys can fall, and have Horus Heresy 2, Electric Boogaloo.
A wise man learns from the deaths of others. Let's see what this lecture is.
But what I would actually think would be cool, and I doubt they would do it, is actually do Horus Heresy 2 Electric Boogaloo, but instead of just Space Marines defecting more to Chaos, you have both Chaos and normal Space Marines defect into their own faction, and you suddenly have a three-way war. You know, you have the Empire of Man and their Astartes, Chaos and their Traitor Marines, and then you just have a group of Space Marines who are just like, look, all of you are idiots. We don't want to deal with either group. Essentially like renegades. Where they're not chaos worshippers, they just want to do their own thing. They think they can run the show better. They've seen the corruption of the Empire and its stupid and blind worship of the Emperor with creating a religion. And suddenly they're just like, no, we're disillusioned enough. We've seen countless wars over this. We want out. And suddenly you have this split conflict.
Incoming gas attack. Time to
how they would work with chaos, or how, not really work with, but how they would interact with chaos, I'm not sure, because I just feel like, I think people would be like, oh, so they're just chaos, like Chaos 2. And to a degree, they would be, unfortunately. But I think you could argue that they're the more... You have the more theocratic and religion-aligned Space Marines in the Empire, and then you have who would essentially be the more tech-related and more scientific Space Marines, who would be more willing to use STCs and could even drudge up some of the old weapons.
Oh, consider it. I will paint this chamber red with your blood!
But they could bring back old stuff like, I think it's Phosphex. It was this chemical... It was like a chemical munition, if I remember correctly, that would cause... What was it? It effectively was a toxin, but also an incendiary. And you could have stuff like that. You could bring back a bunch of old weapons.
Apparently, the Chaos Marines are the masters of the code. He had a project, which might be linked to the network of the Forsaken Sons. Pain is salvation.
I think it'd be interesting, because then it kind of makes... You could bring back old Horus Heresy stuff and give additional use to Horus Heresy models, but being like, hey, you can also use them for our new Heresy, Civil War, Age of Ultron kind of thing. Warhammer 40K endgame, you know. I think it'd be cool. Yeah, it completely screws with lore, and I will admit it does. The only ones I could see doing it would be like Iron Hands. If you had factions from Chaos, probably Iron Warriors. You might have some of the like Corsairs and stuff join in. I just don't know. With the Dark Imperium going on and the Empire Man split with the Warp Storm kind of cutting it in half, I don't know where they would really set up shop. Because if they set up shop in one half, like half in one side, half in the other, I think it's a dumb idea. Tactically, it'd be suicide because you're splitting up your forces and subjecting them to potential chaos exposure when you shouldn't. So you're kind of wasting it there. But if you put them all in one section, I feel like you're almost ignoring all the other threats from the other side. I mean, I don't expect high quality ideas here. I am coming up with this as I speak.
eradicated. Loading.
Man, this is a strange fight to be in. But I'll take it, at least I'm in cover and I'm not dying instantly. Yeah, I'd like to see Space Marines kind of split off. You could have some groups of Imperial Guard join them. You could almost even explain it away as the Tau and how they do all their wild mind fuckery thanks to the ethereal cast. Granted,
Reloading.
I mean, that would make the Tau, if the Tau caused a civil war within the Empire, it'd make the Tau at least a decent threat and worth mentioning, as opposed to how it is now. It feels in lore where they're just like, oh yeah, those blue guys, they exist, I guess. I get why everybody hates the Tau. I mean, they're weeaboo space communists, but the fact that they're just no, I don't think anybody at Games Workshop likes them at this point. That's why they get like no attention. Because they're just like, oh yeah, you guys are a thing. Like, they're a big enough faction that they have to do a codex and update them, but they're not liked enough to actually be really expanded upon or given anything of value. And I don't fully blame them. Like, I think they were kind of written into a corner. But what can you do? I mean, what you literally could do is have some of the fire warriors and like that whole the fire cast rise up against the ethereals and be like, look at these guys, they've been deceiving us. Send them spiraling into a civil war for a while, you know, time skip 100 years, and then be like, okay, we settled it, we have, you know, now there's 5 castes or 5 factions.
Fellow seeker of the truth. I'm afraid that you can't receive the teachings in your current state. Let Ulbrax, the Forsaken, free you from the bonds of your existence. What is this? No, Master! I was faithful!
Looks like your friend freed you from the burden of your limbs. Emperor, be my shield and strength.
I love that. No, I was faithful. This friggin', what is it? Because it's not a dreadnought, even though it's a dreadnought, but it isn't. It's their chaos equivalent fancy name that I forget all the time because it's completely irrelevant to me. Mauler Fiend? No, that's the big thing with the Gatling gun. Whatever it is. I love how it just like runs over, slaps that guy, and then just turns and is like, oh yeah, you. I forgot, you're the reason this is all happening. It just seems goofy to me. Yeah, as I was saying, like, you could have the Tau break into, like, 5 sub-factions. Big civil war fighting. It would... Because the Tau are essentially kept together through coercion, and then you could actually have the Tau come out of it stronger, unified through purpose, and through ideology and political means than not.
My task is done here. I have brought the Emperor's justice to the faithless and avenged countless innocents.
And we got another monolith! Yeah! We keep finding more of these for reasons that aren't explained yet. Give me that armor that won't replace my existing armor. But that is all for now. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to hit the like button. It helps out the channel a lot. If you're new, please make sure to hit the subscribe button. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.